Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're going to be looking at something I find really interesting. It's the social side of sustainable agriculture.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times we focus on the science behind it, all the soil health and, crop yields and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's really about the people, right?
Absolutely.
It's about the communities and the cultures and how all of that comes together to make sustainable farming actually work.
Yeah.
And you, our listener, you sent in a ton of great research on this. So I'm really excited to dig in.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think what comes to mind for a lot of people when you say sustainable farming, it's this picture of a small family farm.
Yeah.
Kind of idyllic.
The red barn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the research you sent shows that's not always the reality.
Not always so simple, right?
No.
Like, where do we even begin to kind of unpack all of this?
Well, I think a good place to start is with those family farms and how they kind of fit into this bigger picture of agroecology. On the one hand, they're often seen as the ideal for sustainable practices.
Yeah, smaller, more connected to the land.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They really have a stake in preserving it, for the future, for their for their grandkids.
Long-term thinking.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting, they face enormous challenges.
Yeah.
Especially when you compare it to large-scale agriculture.
It's like David and Goliath.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of those big hurdles?
Well, one of the biggest things that your research highlighted is access to land.
Okay.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Land ownership is becoming more and more concentrated. It's harder for these smaller farms to get the land they need.
So even the foundation of farming is being chipped away.
Right. And then you add on the financial side of things.
Right, the money.
Yeah. Transitioning to those agroecological practices often means you've got to invest upfront, new equipment, organic inputs, or even just the training.
The knowledge.
Yeah, and for these families that are already working with really thin margins.
Yeah, they're barely getting by as it is.
Right, so those costs can be a real barrier.
So how do they even stand a chance then?
Well, this is where I think it gets really hopeful.
Okay.
Your research talks a lot about cooperatives as a potential solution.
Okay, so working together.
Exactly. They can pool their resources together, get better access to markets, have more power when they're bargaining.
So it's strength in numbers.
Exactly. It levels the playing field.
I like that. Are there examples of this working in the real world?
Oh, yeah, there's tons.
Okay.
One that came up in your research was the campesino movement in Latin America. It's this network of farmers.
Okay.
And they're sharing knowledge and resources.
They're helping each other out.
They even work together to access markets.
Wow.
It's been really successful.
That's great. It's like they built their own support system. Speaking of support systems, I'm curious about the role of women and youth in all of this. Are they big players in sustainable agriculture?
They are.
Yeah.
But your research points out it's not always easy for them.
Okay.
Women, for example, they're essential to food production globally, but they face a ton of obstacles.
It's kind of hard to believe that there are still so many barriers.
Yeah.
What are some of those challenges?
Well, land ownership's a big one.
Okay.
In many places, women's rights to inherit or own land are restricted.
Right.
Which obviously makes it harder to participate.
In farming.
Yeah, and it's not just about fairness.
Right.
It's about recognizing how much women contribute.
Yeah.
They often have this really deep knowledge about plants, seeds, sustainable practices.
Passed down through generations.
Exactly.
Yeah, that traditional knowledge is so valuable.
It is.
And how does that play into agroecology as a whole? Blending that ancient wisdom with modern techniques.
That's one of the coolest things about this whole topic. Yeah.
How much culture influences farming practices. And a lot of that is through something called traditional ecological knowledge.
Okay, tech.
Yeah, tech. It's basically this huge body of knowledge built up over generations about the local ecosystems, the plants, weather patterns, all these sustainable techniques.
It's like working with nature, not against it.
Exactly, adapting to your environment.
I love that. So how does that actually translate into farming?
Well, think about all those seasonal rituals and ceremonies that you see.
Oh, yeah.
Tied to farming.
Like harvest festivals.
Yes.
Rain dances.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's not just practical techniques.
Right.
It's about a deeper connection.
To the land.
Yeah, and respect for the natural world.
And often a sense of responsibility to preserve it, right?
Yeah, for future generations.
It's like built-in sustainability.
Yeah.
But isn't there sometimes a clash between these traditional ways of knowing and modern science.
There can be tension.
But the research shows that instead of seeing them as opposing forces,
Right.
there's a huge opportunity to blend them.
Take the best of both worlds.
Exactly.
Are there real-world examples of this happening?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
The Tigray project in Ethiopia, they've been able to integrate traditional agroforestry practices
Okay.
with these modern soil and water conservation techniques.
So they're working together.
Yeah, and it's led to some really positive outcomes.
That's amazing. It seems like agroecology is this like beautiful tapestry,
Yeah.
Weaving together the social structures, the cultural heritage, and then environmental stewardship.
You got it. And speaking of social structures and resilience, that's where we're going to head next in this deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready.
We'll explore how agroecology helps communities not just survive, but thrive,
Let's do it.
even when things get tough.
All right, I'm excited. Okay, so we're talking about agroecology and these really interesting social structures and like cultural practices.
Yeah.
I'm ready to get going with this.
Okay.
But I have to admit, I keep hearing this word resilience,
Right.
and I'm not entirely sure I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does agroecology actually make communities more resilient?
Right.
Especially with all these challenges that we're talking about.
Well, it's a really important question, and the research actually points to this idea of social capital
Okay, social capital.
as being like a key ingredient
Okay.
for building those resilient communities.
So is that like having a lot of friends on Facebook?
Not quite.
Okay.
It's more about the connections within a community, like the quality of those connections,
Okay.
the trust people have in each other, their
Yeah.
willingness to help each other out.
Okay, so it's like the fabric of the community.
Exactly.
Okay, got it.
It's what holds everything together.
And you're saying agroecology strengthens that fabric.
Exactly.
Okay, so,
Well, think about the cooperatives we talked about.
okay, yeah.
That's a perfect example
Okay.
of how agroecology builds that social capital. People are working together towards a common goal. They're sharing their knowledge and resources.
Right, supporting each other.
Exactly.
Okay. But how does that actually help when like a real crisis hits?
Okay.
Like a natural disaster or something
Yeah.
like that.
So imagine a community that gets hit by a really bad drought.
Right.
If they have that strong social capital, they're more likely to help each other out.
Sure.
Share those precious water resources, their seeds, maybe even their labor.
They've got each other's backs.
Exactly. They might even have systems in place already,
Oh, okay.
like community seed banks
Oh, cool.
or collective grain storage,
Oh.
which are often based on traditional practices to
Okay.
help deal with those kinds of situations.
So it's like a safety net.
Yeah, for the whole community.
I like that, but it's not just about surviving, right?
Right.
It's about bouncing back.
Exactly. And that's where economic diversity comes in.
Okay. How does agroecology promote economic diversity?
Well, instead of just relying on one or two crops, which can be vulnerable to pests or diseases.
Right, or market crashes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Agroecological communities usually have a wider variety
Of crops.
of crops, livestock, value-added products.
So they're not putting all their eggs in one basket?
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And that diversity helps create multiple income streams.
Okay, so if one thing fails,
Yeah, the whole community doesn't go down with it.
makes sense.
And it often leads to more localized markets and exchange systems,
Interesting.
keeping those resources within the community.
I see how it all ties together.
Yeah.
A stronger social fabric,
Yeah.
more diverse economic activities. It's like agroecology creates this web of resilience.
Exactly.
And of course, we can't forget about the environmental benefits.
Right. All those things we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the healthier soils, cleaner water, and more biodiversity.
These are all things that help a community adapt.
To climate change or other environmental stresses.
You got it.
So it really is this holistic approach,
Yeah, addressing all those challenges at the same time.
social, economic, and environmental.
That's right. And the best part is it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Okay.
Agroecology really adapts to each local context,
That makes sense.
using the unique knowledge and resources that are available.
Okay, I'm with you. But even with all these benefits, why isn't agroecology more widespread?
Right?
Like, what's holding it back?
That is the million-dollar question. And
Yeah.
we'll really get into it in the last part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But one of the biggest obstacles is just the sheer dominance of industrial agriculture.
Right, it's such a huge system.
It is.
How do you even begin to shift away from that?
The research suggests that we need to start by changing how we think about food
Okay.
and what we value about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, industrial agriculture is all about efficiency and profit.
Right.
And it often comes at the expense of sustainability and social equity.
So we need like a totally different perspective.
We need a paradigm shift.
Okay, a paradigm
Yeah.
shift. Got it.
Yeah, instead of seeing food as just a commodity,
Right.
we have to understand its real value,
Okay.
how it connects to our health, our environment, and our culture.
And that's got to happen at all levels, right?
Exactly, from individuals to policymakers.
So it's not just about changing farming, it's about changing our relationship with food.
Exactly.
But that sounds really daunting.
It can be.
Like, how do we even begin to influence something that big?
Well, one of the most powerful things we can do is use our purchasing power.
Okay, how?
By choosing to buy locally grown, sustainably produced food,
Mhm.
we're sending a message to the market
Okay,
that we want a different kind of agriculture.
so vote with our wallets.
Exactly. Support the people and the businesses that align with those values.
Okay, beyond just buying local, though.
Yeah. We also need to educate ourselves
Right.
where our food comes from,
Okay.
support policies that promote sustainable agriculture, and advocate for change within our communities.
So every little bit helps.
Every action matters.
It's like we're all part of this big food system.
And they're all connected.
And when we understand those connections, we can make better choices.
Exactly.
So it's not about feeling helpless. It's about finding those actions we can take.
That's right.
Okay, I like that. And the research actually talks about some really exciting community-led initiatives
Yeah,
that are already proving agroecology can work on a larger scale.
absolutely.
That's inspiring. Are there any that really stood out to you?
Well, one really interesting example is the zero-budget natural farming movement in India.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier.
We did, and it's a great example of farmers coming together to change things.
Okay.
They're moving away from those chemical-intensive methods
Mm-hmm.
and embracing more sustainable practices.
And you mentioned the government is even involved.
The state of Andhra Pradesh has been really supportive.
Okay.
They recognize that zero-budget natural farming can improve livelihoods
Yeah.
and soil health and environmental sustainability.
Wow. So policy support can really make a difference.
It can make a huge difference.
That's encouraging. Are there other examples of this kind of change happening?
Oh, yeah, there are tons.
Okay.
The research talks about all sorts of agroecological initiatives around the world,
Okay.
from community-supported agriculture programs
Yeah.
to policy changes that help small-scale farmers and indigenous communities access land.
So it's a global movement.
It is.
That's amazing. It seems like amidst all these challenges, there's a lot of positive change happening.
There is.
It gives me hope for the future of our food system.
Me too. And while the road to a truly sustainable and equitable food system is going to be long,
Right.
the agroecology movement shows us it's possible.
It's worth fighting for.
It is.
We've been talking about all these amazing benefits of agroecology, right? Stronger communities, empowered farmers, that cool mix of traditional knowledge and modern science.
Yeah.
It seems like it has so much potential to create a food system that's sustainable and fair. But we've also been kind of hinting at the fact that there are some big hurdles that we need to overcome to make it mainstream.
Right.
So what are some of those big roadblocks?
Well, the research you sent really highlights the fact that industrial agriculture is just so entrenched.
Yeah, it's a huge system.
It's massive,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of people who benefit from keeping it the way it is.
Right.
So changing that system means we have to address some really tough issues.
It's like trying to turn a giant ship around.
That's a great analogy.
It's just so ingrained in everything we do with food.
Exactly.
So where do you even begin to tackle something that big?
Well, the research suggests that we need to start by changing how we think about food itself.
Yeah.
Like right now, industrial agriculture is all about efficiency and profit.
Right. Producing as much food as possible for as little money as possible.
Yeah, but that often means sacrificing things like sustainability and fairness.
Okay, so we need a completely different way of looking at things.
We need a fundamental shift in how we value food.
So it's not just a product. It's a
Exactly.
part of something bigger.
It's connected to our health, our environment, our cultures.
And that shift has to happen at all levels, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to be involved, from individual consumers to the people making policies.
But that feels so overwhelming.
It can be.
Like, how can we as individuals even make a dent in something so big?
Well, one of the most powerful things we can do is choose how we spend our money.
Cool.
When we buy locally grown, sustainably produced food, we're supporting the farmers and businesses that are doing things differently.
Right, we're saying we want a different kind of food system.
Exactly. And it's not just about buying local either.
Yeah.
It's about educating ourselves about where our food comes from.
Right, becoming more conscious consumers.
Oh, exactly. And it's about supporting policies that encourage sustainable agriculture.
Okay, so voting for the right people and things like that.
Yes, and speaking up in our communities, advocating for change.
So even small actions can add up.
Every little bit counts.
We're all part of this big interconnected web.
We are. And the more we understand those connections,
Right.
the more we can make informed choices that support a shift towards agroecology.
Okay, so it's not about feeling powerless. It's about finding those concrete things we can do.
Exactly. And speaking of concrete actions, the research actually highlights some really cool community-led projects.
Oh, yeah, those are always inspiring.
They are. And they show that agroecology can work on a larger scale.
Okay. Do any of them stand out to you?
Well, we already talked about the zero-budget natural farming movement in India.
Yeah, that one was really fascinating.
It is, and it's a great example of farmers working together to make a change.
Right.
Moving away from all those chemicals and embracing more sustainable practices.
And I remember you saying that even the government is getting involved.
The state of Andhra Pradesh has been a huge supporter.
Oh.
They recognize that this approach can benefit farmers and the environment.
Yeah, improve livelihoods, soil, health, sustainability, all of that.
Exactly, and it shows how policy can really help scale up these agroecological approaches.
That's awesome. So it's not just happening on a small scale.
No, it's happening at different levels all around the world.
Okay, so what else is out there?
Well, there are all sorts of community-supported agriculture programs.
Oh, yeah, those are great.
They connect farmers directly with consumers.
Yeah.
And there are policy changes that are helping small-scale farmers and indigenous communities access land.
Wow. So it's really a global movement.
It is. It's happening everywhere.
That's amazing. It's like even though there are all these challenges, there's still so much positive change happening.
There is. It's really inspiring.
It gives me hope for the future of our food system.
Me too. And while we still have a long way to go to create a truly sustainable and fair food system,
Right.
the agroecology movement shows us it's possible.
It's a journey worth taking.
It is.
Well, listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the social side of agroecology. I hope you've learned something new and maybe feel a little bit inspired.
Me too.
A huge thank you to our listener for sending in this incredible research.
Yeah, thank you.
It's led to some really thought-provoking conversations.
It has.
And to all our other listeners out there, keep learning, keep asking questions, and most importantly, keep exploring those deep connections between food, our communities, and the planet.
Yeah.
Until next time, keep diving deep.
Yeah.